Welcome to the Spark Podcast, hosted by Dynamic Lifecycle Innovations, where cutting-edge solutions meet effortless experience and maximum returns. Today we are joined by Caitlin Fierstad and Kaela Kucera. Now let's get started.
Welcome everybody to this session of the Spark Podcast, hosted by Dynamic Lifecycle Innovations. We are really excited today to be joined by Kaela Kucera. She is our Director of Outbound on the ITAD side at Dynamic. And we are going to be diving in and talking about how we can help you, or how your ITAD vendors can help you as an organization maximize the value return on your assets. Kaela, thank you so much for joining us and helping to share some of this information that we have for all of our organizations and listeners out there for today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So thinking about how at Dynamic, we have more of that consultative approach to helping organizations work through fair market value or consignment, or based on which one they choose, what types of returns they potentially would get based on their assets that they're disposing of. Can you just explain that process a little bit more, the steps to that process, and then the steps that Dynamic takes that probably a lot of ITAD vendors take in order to get a true assessment of what those values might be?
Yes, definitely. So here at Dynamic, we really value ourselves on communication, openness, and transparency. When working with a customer, we need to get that information from the customer that includes really down to the make and model of all of their products. I mean, that's including the RAM, processors, and drives of their laptops, and really getting down to that level so that we can understand what the value of those assets are. In addition to that, our specialists jump into forecasting. They look at historical models. We look at what the market currently is at. We look at whether e-commerce or wholesale is really the way to go with these products. And again, having that open communication and transparency with our customers so that they can make that decision.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really helpful to know all those details. Do you ever see where customers give you lists of these are the assets that we're getting rid of, and it's not detailed enough in order to make accurate representation of what value could get back? And if you do see that situation, what do you do then?
Great question. That does happen often. Not every organization has the means to get us those specific specs as much as we would like to have those.
Yeah.
So kind of twofold. Our specialists will go in and we will make assumptions based on more likely a lower level or a common level of specs.
Okay.
And we will still provide values and then be upfront with the customer that those are the values that were based on these specs. And the customer then can come back with specs later on or understand that what they have is going to fall in that range. But yeah, we truly do go back and we will ask for updates if we don't have a ton of specs or model or information that can help us drive that value.
Okay. And you mentioned quickly too, you mentioned outbound versus e-commerce. Can you just give a quick review of what is the difference, or how does that work? And then also, how do you decide that an item might go wholesale or e-commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, a common misconception. So outbound is both e-commerce and wholesale. No, great question. It's so funny because a lot of people do call it outbound and expect wholesale, but they are both outbound sales. So between e-commerce and wholesale, really from an e-commerce standpoint, we look at our channels, we look at our Amazons, our eBays, all the different channels you can sell on online, and what is trending, what is the value we're looking at. And when we are looking at your assets, are they in good condition? And we'll go right down to refurbishment, we'll do some repairs, and we'll do everything we can to get the most value out of that product from an e-commerce standpoint.
Okay.
If we're at a point where repair isn't going to bring up the value, we do look at a wholesale, and that is, again, it sells for a lesser price, but we still get good pricing for those things.
Okay.
So we will look for someone who's going to look to buy in bulk and probably part that out themselves.
Sure. Okay. So when you're going through that process, and you mentioned the grading, how does that work? What does that grading system look like? And is there a universal grading system out there? So if I have an organization looking to work potentially with different ITAD vendors, does everybody have the same grading philosophy and strategy, or does that differ based on ITAD vendor?
I think a lot of us wish that was the case, but here at Dynamic, we do have our own grading scale. And, we suggest that as a customer talking to your vendors about what their grading scale looks like. Just a little bit of an overview from our grading scale. Grade A products are usually new in box or new open box products. When we talk about B, it's very light cosmetic damage, that type of thing, where we're looking to really use those type of items to sell on e-commerce. When we get into the grade C's and D's, usually some repair is needed, or we do need to sell or scrap for components. And at that level, we'll still try to maximize value and pull out the RAM, the hard drives, the processors, and still try to get the customer a return on those items, even if the full unit itself is not resellable.
Great. So that's really good to know, I think. And I don't know if all ITAD vendors do that, but if the whole device is not resellable, I could still potentially, as an organization, make some value on the return from the component selling if those components are still in good condition then.
Yes, and our specialists know the value for these components. Another thing we do is we will often take those components and we do something called build to order. So as a laptop comes into us, we may not sell it as it comes in. We will take out the hard drive, the processor, the RAM, and we do offer online on our different channels a build to order process for laptops. So that just really gives us a lot more movement in the market to be able to sell a higher level of units when we can build to order. And then the customers will still get that revenue back on those hard drives, those RAMs, those processors that even may sell in a different unit or within the unit themselves that does sell eventually.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, just so many different ways to potentially get that value back as a customer and as an organization. Great. So you mentioned it too, so I just want to keep diving in. I love this. With components and then devices, like the devices themselves are not fully revaluable or resellable. The components you dive in, some might be resellable, but I'm sure some aren't also. Or maybe none of the components, the whole device is not sellable. So how does that work too? If you can just dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so a little bit of a twofold. So let's give a laptop, for instance. We get it, and it has a lot of damage. It's not going to be resellable in even after repair. So we will harvest those components out of it. If the top or the back of it is also in good shape, we will keep that to possibly utilize on another laptop, but for the most part, we usually do recycle. From that standpoint, we send it over to our recycling facility, but from a very sustainable model, we make sure that it is recycled properly, all the way down to stripping it and putting it through our processes to make sure that every metal is separated out and goes to the proper place it needs to be.
Wonderful. And Dynamic has recycling in-house, so it probably makes that a little bit easier movement back and forth.
Yes, definitely. I think that is a huge boost for us, is knowing who our recycling partner is. Of course, it is us, and that we know that it's going to the right place. When working with other vendors, we suggest to customers, make sure that if you are working with an ITAD, who is their recycling partner if they don't do recycling in-house. In this day and age, there is just a lot going on with recycling, and you want to make sure that those recycled products are going somewhere sustainable.
Yeah, that's great. Just to be able to know that information and dive in deeper as an organization, as a customer, to if this ITAD vendor isn't finishing all of the material, who is? It's really important to most customers and organizations out there, is to know, like, where is all the material ending up, both from a just secure standpoint and want to make sure it's taken care of properly, but also sustainably too, and just making sure that it's not taken care of in a way that is harmful to the environment either. So that's really great to know, and a great point just for any organizations out there to ask those questions as well.
Yes, definitely.
Good. So I've gone through a lot of questions with you. Thank you. One last question I have too is just, what other impacts within the market out there could possibly impact the value return or impact just an organization's partnership with a vendor and just the markets in general? Is there anything that you would say of, when these XYZ things happen, make sure you connect with your vendor at that point in time to see what's going to happen with the value of your assets?
Yeah, and that's a great question. It's there's a lot of different things in the market that we can't control. I know from a dynamic standpoint, we look at things like tariffs, which are out of our control, and just try to really keep our thumb on the market. We really suggest talking to your ITAD vendor about what they're doing with the tariffs and all the changes that are happening. For us, we're anticipating that new electronics coming into the market are going to have a tariff impact. It's going to create higher price points. So that may also drive demand for the refurbished market. Sure. So from a reselling standpoint, we could bring more value to our customers if that is the case.
Okay. Anything else that you can see outside? I mean, tariffs right now is a hot topic. Anything else that really would be an external impact on the market?
Yeah, there's a few other things. So one of them that we've been keeping a close eye on is the ending of Windows 10. So looking at Generation 7 and below for laptops and some other items like tablets and phones that are also impacted, that will no longer be able to support Windows 10 or move into Windows 11. Those types of products will not be allowed on Amazon as of August. So we are
for like to be resold.
to be resold on
Okay.
Amazon. Yeah. So we are looking at a few different avenues of, are we having to move those to a different market? Those types of products, will they move into wholesale? So there's a couple different things there where we're trying to still maximize value for those older assets. But know that there will be difference in supply and demand when it comes to that time frame. Additionally, there's the laws of supplies and demand. So always watching purchasing behavior in the markets, whether that is the wholesale market or the e-commerce market. What is actively selling? What is hot on the market right now? What has the most value? And trying to really position ourselves to get the most value in those markets. And then last, I would just say building trust with a vendor and really diving in and making sure that you and the vendor are communicating constantly on those changes and what the market looks like. Really here at Dynamic, we focus on finding every avenue we can to bring you the most value. And that's what ITAD should be doing, is looking for different ways to be creative, finding new marketplaces, finding new buyers and avenues to bring you that value.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I know, as you had mentioned, it's more of that, just the partnership together. You're working with an organization, both on the outbound side and probably our sales team members on the inbound side too, of like, how can we continue to get the most value and just make the most out of the partnership, right? That's why we work together, is we want to make sure that everybody is winning and that you're able to move through that process efficiently. So that's really wonderful to hear, just of that approach and how to work through, things that are within the control, part of the normal process, but also what's out of the control of the organization and the ITAD vendor, and how do you work through that together to make sure everybody's on the same page? And to your point, that trust to have the good, clear communication, but just the openness to have that communication back and forth too.
Yeah, definitely. You just always want to be with a vendor you trust. And I know here at Dynamic, between our values and our culture and our, the specialists that we have that really take pride in their job and keeping things sustainable, giving, products their next best life, especially, electronics their next best life, and finding the most value for our customers. We just encompass all of that, and really ITADs should. At the end of the day, they should be looking at doing what we can for not only our environment, but for the customers and for their people.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, well, you've given me so much information today and reviewed it. I love it. Thank you so much. We'll probably wrap up for today, but I'm so excited to continue to learn about these topics, these aspects, the different models. And, I know we have some information out there and probably more to be sent out there too, just in terms of ways that people can learn about this too. It's so interesting. And to your point too, connect with your ITAD vendor, because people might do it differently. But I think that's really wonderful, just the information you were able to share with us today. So thank you so much, Kaela, for joining us on this session.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you for everybody joining and listening. We really appreciate it. And stay tuned for our next topic on the Spark podcast at Dynamic. Thank you.